I've recently entered my 7th year of calisthenics training. And when I started at 14, I believed every single myth that most people still believe today. And it kept me from building muscle for way too long. And the crazy part is, most people still believe it today, which is why they are not growing. So in today's video, I'll break down the biggest calisthenics muscle building myths that you need to stop believing in and what you should be doing instead if you actually want to see muscle growth with calisthenics. So let's first get in to the roadmap of growth with calisthenics, because I have to cover some very basic things that you need to understand. And if you don't, I'm sorry. The gains are gonna come very, very slow. Or for a lot of folks who already have a very bad setup in calisthenics training in general, are not gonna see any gains at all. They're gonna stay in that skinny phase where they're kind of gaining strength, but also not really gaining strength, but they're gonna stay stagnant in that stage for way too long. And they could actually be building muscle quite fast. So what am I referring to? What is this missing piece that most already miss before they even stop believing in the myths that I'm about to get into? First off, imagine if this right here. Let's say you had you right now and you had your dream character, the physique that you've always wanted. So the vehicle from A to B, from skinny to jacked, is with calisthenics. What would be the most common thing that people always miss out on when they are going through the journey? When they're still right here? It's always the lack of consistency. Now, the thing is, you might be training every single day, but you still could be inconsistent. Now, that sounds weird, right? Yo, I'm training every single day. I'm training 7 times a week, 6 times a week, and I'm still inconsistent. What are you talking about? Well, what I'm referring to is you're inconsistent with the right routine that brings you from A to B. If you're going to be going from A to B, if that's your goal, if your goal is to go from skinny to jacked, and you're not sticking to the same reliable routine that's going to get you there, it's basically going to go like this. You start with a routine and then you get bumped back. You start with a routine, you come a little further, and then you get bumped back because you change and change and change. And that is exactly why I have created the Jacked by Calisthenics Blueprint. Now, if you want to get results like this, and you want to do it with calisthenics, you want to actually go from skinny to jacked within 6 months time with the right way of calisthenics training, then I'm here for you. I'm going to hold your hand with this blueprint, and you're actually going to be making those gains reality. So click the top link in the description and I'll see you inside. Now let's get into myth number 1. And this is something that I believed for a long time. You need endless reps and endless volume in order to grow with calisthenics. Now, most calisthenics athletes today know that that is baloney. It's bullshit, right? We don't need endless sets, reps, volume to grow with calisthenics. The reason why that is because we can change variations to be able to lower the volume again, lower the reps, lower everything that you're doing, up the intensity, and gain muscles with those variations. So we don't need endless reps. But why is this myth still commonly believed in? Why is it that when you go to the gym and you ask a guy, yo, can you do calisthenics, or do you think calisthenics works for building muscle? Why is it that every single weightlifting athlete, or at least uneducated ones, always think you need endless reps? And that is because they only think about the most basic version of the calisthenics world, such as the push-up, the dip, the pull-up, the squat, all the bodyweight versions of those exercises. Now, don't get me wrong, these are the best exercises that you can do, but they automatically think about the most easiest variation by doing it just fast as fuck, trying to get tons of reps in. And yes, if you think just doing a normal bodyweight push-up as fast as you can, doing 12 of those is gonna build you muscle, well, yeah, you're wrong. So I understand where they're coming from. If you want to build muscle with that, you're gonna have to basically go to a very extensive set with a lot of reps to be able to stimulate some growth out of that. You have to think as hypertrophy as this, right? Let's say you have the athlete who does 12 reps of a very hard push-up variation, such as weighted deficit deep push-ups. And then you have the guy who does high rep push-ups to build muscle, so he doesn't rely on any variation. This guy, with every single rep that he's doing, let's say he does about 12 reps, every single rep that he's doing screams quite a lot of growth. So he's building pretty good muscle with that, because every single rep that he's doing, he's actually straining quite a bit. He's doing them slow, so he's getting real good results from those. So every single rep is screaming a lot of muscle growth. But let's say the guy who is doing 60 or 70 push-ups per set, and each and every single rep actually doesn't scream as much growth, but it whispers a little bit of growth. Now you could imagine that the guy who screams growth every single rep actually gets more muscle growth. But at the end of the day, these two athletes, still have stimulated the same amount of growth. But why do I think that this guy who was doing 12 reps per set, who screams more muscle growth per rep, is because it is more of a reliable choice. Now, how do you do this without having to go to endless reps? Because if you go to endless reps, you're gonna have to stick to the normal push-up, the normal pull-up, the normal row, squat, whatever. But there's so many ways how you can actually change the exercise, right? Such as the push-up, and make it so difficult to where you can only do about 8 reps per set, to where your body screams a lot of growth each and every single set, which is gonna end up in gaining more muscle. So the best way that you can, for example, do that is instead of always sticking to the normal push-ups on the bars or on parallettes or on the floor, just try out rings. If you actually stay consistent with rings for such a long time and you never really do it, but then you get into them and you're shaking all of a sudden and you can't control yourself, this is the time when the muscles are going to be literally screaming for help each and every single set, which is going to cause for a lot of growth. My chest is one of my best body parts. It is my best body part, right? Why is it my best body part? It's my best body part not because I train it every single day or I train it extremely hard. No. I use exercises that are extremely difficult for my chest to actually withstand. If I do push-ups every single day and I do 100 straight, after a little while it's gonna stop. The growth is gonna stop, of course, right? Even if you do more reps, after a little while you're gonna reach a plateau where you're not really pushing further when it comes to destroying your muscle fibers. So what should I do instead? Well, make the exercise drastically difficult, not as in doing planche push-ups and handstand push-ups, but just pick a variation that still sticks to the normal variation of a push-up, but try it on a different piece of equipment such as rings, or change the leverages so much to where you can only do about 12 or 8 reps. That is how you build muscle with calisthenics more reliably. Now, why do I think it's more reliable? Well, that is because the high rep route, which I used to do, by the way, for 4 years straight because I knew none better, you need a lot of extra things for that to be able to go to such a high rep number each and every single workout. The mindset needs to be shifted into something totally different for you to actually do 50 reps or 30 pull-ups or 50 rows per set. The mindset is going to change for that. Number 2, your pain barrier needs to be extended for such a long time, because hanging in there on the bar with your forearms burning off of your fucking body for 3 minutes straight trying to complete 50 in a set is extremely difficult, as you probably could imagine or know if you have done it. So the best way of going about it is by making it more accessible for yourself to hit failure in a single set, which is going to be in the 4 to about 15 rep range, to where you can hit failure more accessible as opposed to doing 50 reps a set. That's exactly the reason why people promote a hypertrophy rep range. It's not because when you do 8 reps, every muscle just fucking responds to it like magic. No, it's because you can hit failure more accessible in a rep range where you're, for example, doing only 8 reps. When you're doing 50, it's gonna be a lot harder to reach failure in a 50 rep set. Now, let's go into myth number 2. And if you are a educated calisthenics athlete, you know that this is bullshit. But if you still believe in this, I am asking you right now to stop believing in it and change your routine up drastically. Because if you think that calisthenics basics are too easy, you're simply not training correctly. If you think that pull-ups, push-ups, dips, lunges, all those exercises are easy, I'm sorry, but you're seriously doing something wrong in your training routine right now. Take a look at this client right here, who was doing a lot of sets and quite a lot of reps as well. As of 2 weeks ago, I started training him one-on-one in my Jack by Calisthenics blueprint. He signed up for the coaching, and the first thing I said on our first call is we're gonna drop the volume down to about 2 sets with just the basic variations. We're gonna drop everything down, even the weight that he was using, even the body weight variations that he was using. I basically said to him, we're gonna make everything easier, but there's one exception. Every single exercise that we're gonna do, we're gonna apply 1000% more intensity to it, which means that we're gonna ask everything out of our body every single set with every single exercise. What happens? He sends me this message saying, bro, I used to do 5 sets, now I do 2, and fuck me, bro. This is insane. It hurt him way more. It affected him way more, and that is because we applied intensity to a low volume routine, but with the basics. So for everyone who is right now out there saying basics calisthenics is too easy, it's because you're simply training soft. you're soft, you're not training hard enough. If you take the push-up, the pull-up, the dip, the pike push-up, the rows, which is the most effective exercise selection for your upper body, and you taking it to a close proximity to failure range with a slowed and controlled tempo, with a more increased range of motion, with variations that are very difficult for you, you're gonna start to find out that basics and calisthenics is not easy at all. And matter of fact, it's probably even more tough than all of the weightlifting routines that you have done. So please understand, if you have been noticing that for yourself, if you think, you know what, all of the things that I'm doing, tricep, dips, push-ups, just normal pull-ups is too easy, change up your routine. Start training properly, just like my client is doing right now. So if you actually want to get coaching one-on-one, then also just join Jack by Calisthenics, and within there you can sign up for coaching, and we'll see if you're a good fit, and we're gonna make it happen. Now let's get into myth number 3. If you do weighted calisthenics, you're going to have to do it extremely heavy. Why is this a myth? Because it sounds quite obvious. Well, the reason why I think it's a myth, and kind of truth also, is because yes, you can make a shit ton of progress by going extremely heavy on all the weighted basics, such as heavy weighted dips, heavy weighted pull-ups, heavy weighted ring dips, rows, whatever. You can, on every single exercise, you can add 30 fucking plates and go heavy on it. But why do I think that it's not the only way, and that there's actually a more reliable way to growing with calisthenics with lighter weight? That is because there's something called effort. When you put in more effort during a set, and what I basically mean by that is increasing the range of motion, making it really difficult for yourself. So don't just try to do the reps, but actually make it more difficult over time. You start to figure out that you don't need a lot of weight. I'm telling you, this comes from personal experience. This is why I want you to believe me. I can do pull-ups with 4 plates. That's my 1 rep max. I can do dips with 225 pounds. I have crazy weighted calisthenics strength, and this is with real good proper street lifting weighted calisthenics form. So not just half reps or only repping it out in the bottom half or in the bottom half. No, real full reps. I can do that. But when I train outside of my garden right now and I use the proper way of building muscle with calisthenics, the beautiful thing about it is I don't even need any more than at max 66 pounds. Now you might think, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's a 45-pound plate with a 22-pound plate. And that's all you use right now, and you used to do 4 plates of pull-ups? Yes. The reason why is because I changed my technique, and that requires more effort. Now, yes, I can do 10 pull-ups right now, quick as fuck, easy, just repping it out, trying to just complete the 10 reps instead of thinking about the 10 reps. But I can also make it extremely difficult for myself so that per set, I'm putting in more and more effort, which makes my muscles work harder, which is gonna end up in you gaining more muscle. Now, it sounds obvious, but why aren't you doing it? If it sounds so obvious, then you should be able to do 30 pull-ups with the perfect technique in human history. But you can't. That's because you did not practice it. Now, I'm not saying that I can do that, because I cannot do 30 pull-ups with extremely slow form, 3-second negative, stretching my back on the bottom and exploding back up and not even pausing at the top, just literally just squeeze and release it back again. I cannot do 30 reps of those. I can do 30 or 40 reps body weight fast though, but that doesn't mean that you should. So the first change that you should make is, instead of trying to go heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier with weighted calisthenics, just make some simple changes when it comes to your technique. When you have clean technique, good technique, that's real fucking training, bro. I hate it when people say good technique is for pussies and whatever. Good technique is for real athletes who want to grow and who want to get better. Especially when it comes to calisthenics, bro. Come on, bro. You cannot be out here doing pull-ups with the sloppiest form in human history. It's kids play. We don't do that shit. So the best way of going about it is by actually making drastic changes to your technique, so that you can only hit about 8 reps of the basic pull-up. Now you might think like, yo, I've never done that. 8 reps of basic pull-ups. I can do 30. No. You can do 30 of improper technique. But what I want you to do is use proper technique, which means range of motion is on point. Your technique is on point. You're actually doing the reps properly, and you're thinking about doing the reps as you go. Now, I don't want you to be the type of guy who is only focused on that. Of course, you want to progressively overload, but you want to progressively overload within the good technique that you're using. Now, let's get into the last myth. Myth number 4. Calisthenics only builds muscles for beginners. Now, this couldn't be more further from the truth, because in my opinion, yes, beginners have an advantage with calisthenics, because the more harder calisthenics is for you, the easier you're gonna build muscle with it. So if you're more advanced, if you're more on the advanced stage, it's going to be harder to build muscle with it because you're going to have to make drastic changes here and there to make it more difficult, or else you're not progressively overloading. Obvious, right? But why do I think that it's still a myth that only beginners can benefit from doing calisthenics and doing pull-ups and push-ups here and there? The reason why they think that, why people who believe in that myth think this, is because they don't know how to progressively overload with calisthenics themselves. Once you start learning how to progressively overload from one certain type of variation of a pull-up by doing a pull-up with proper technique, as I just explained in the previous chapter, then you're starting to find out that calisthenics is not for beginners, and calisthenics is for the most advanced athletes out there. Calisthenics is tough. Okay? Calisthenics is the most difficult muscle building sports in the world. If you want to genuinely build muscle with calisthenics and you don't want to use weights for this and you just want to do calisthenic training, it's going to be hard, yes. You can probably make faster gains in the gym doing weightlifting than doing calisthenics because the steps are in front of you like this. It's very easy. But why do I think that it's actually way more impressive and you're going to reach better results in the long run with calisthenics? Is because you're doing exercises that require a shit ton of control and strength from your body. And you of course do that with the free weights, but not as much as doing a fucking pull-up variation where you're swinging back and forth and you're trying to control yourself with your core and with your back. It's way different. You understand? So if you want to genuinely build muscle with calisthenics, it's very difficult. But as a beginner, you're going to be seeing progress like this because it works for you, right? But if you're more advanced, it's also going to work for you because you need to know how to progress from one level to another level in order to gain progress with it. And that is exactly what you should do. Now, if you're not going to be doing this, the gains are going to come very slow because, as I said, your body needs to progressively overload at some time, right? If you're going to just stick to the regular old things that you've been doing, you're not going to get there. I always say on this channel, the work that got you to intermediate is not the same that's going to get you to advanced. So you need to do something different. So after we have stopped believing in these myths, how do we now actually build muscle with calisthenics? Well, I'm going to explain the 3 simplest steps to you right now that you can implement today in order to see more progress in the long run. And the first one is build a routine that you can stick to. That's arguably the most important step of building muscle with calisthenics and just with every sport in general. You have to stick on something. What I explained in the first few minutes of the video, A to B, skinny to jacked, this is what you want to do. But in this roadmap, you're constantly resetting your progress by changing what you're doing. If you stop doing that and you just stick to a reliable routine, which is all laid out in the top link in the description, you're going to actually build muscle because your body is now progressively overloading with something instead of progressively overloading with something and then changing it totally and then resetting all your progress. Why would you do that? And then step number 2 is progressively overloading on the basics with the 3 main pillars: tempo, range of motion, and variations. Now, I just explained that in these myths. So you want to be basically taking the basic exercises that you are doing right now and change the variations of it, change the tempo and the range of motion, and you want to progressively overload in that. And that way, you're going to actually see growth with calisthenics because your body is experiencing new things. And then the third one is consistency with those 2 steps. You got to understand that if you stay consistent with something, especially with something that's reliable and that you actually enjoy, bro, you don't even imagine how many gains you're going to make. Stop staying inconsistent with something that you have created or something that you follow. It doesn't matter what it is. You need to learn how to stop switching from things and just stay consistent. So if you actually want to make that change, then this is day number 1. Click the top link in the description. I'm going to help you out with the blueprint that is laid out in there so that the skinny to jack transformation is actually going to be made with calisthenics. So if you want to join us, the proper way of calisthenics training, if you want to stop running in circles, stop resetting your progress, stop wasting years, then click the top link in the description because I'm there for you and we're going to make this happen together. So with that being said, watch this video right here because in this video, I'm going to be explaining to you the best way of training to failure with calisthenics.